Hello once again my friends and welcome to yet another PhilbertGreen painting video. As always, this is hope you are following along at home. Making his third appearance in the original trilogy of video games, it stars Alpha Team's helicopter pilot himself, Brad Chickenheart Vickers. We've missed you like a hole in the head, pal. What, too soon? Alerting our leading lady to her stalking pursuer before meeting his untimely end at the hands of Nemi himself. Perhaps we can try to avoid his fate on the tabletop and get him out of the doomed Raccoon City? Just like my other videos, if you are following along at home, just take your time and go at a pace that you are comfortable with. As ever, we'll be starting off by basing him with Mechanicus Standard Grey. Dubbed Chickenheart due to his favourite strategy of running away, we'll start with his legs. I used Caliban Green to paint his annoying camouflage trousers, more on them later. As ever, I thinned down my paints and used at least 2 thin coats. With a base layer of Caliban down, I used Loren Forest to brighten his trousers up to prepare them for a step later on. For his top half, I used Averland Sunset to start off with to paint his flak jacket, or is it just a flashy late 90s body warmer? As with all the lighter colours we've used so far, just layer it up with thin coats until you get that nice, full, even looking colour. Speaking of which, I used White Scar next to again layer up the sleeves of his t-shirt, avoiding the star's emblem patches that are on his shoulders. Next up was his skin. Our good old-fashioned Cadian Fleshtone was my pick, as I painted all the exposed skin on his face and arms. On the closer inspection of his model, Brad is doing a Michael Jackson and is wearing a glove on his gun hand, which I left to be painted later. After that, I used Mournfang Brown to paint his hair. It's Corvus Black's turn next, which I used to paint his belt. And then I used Leadbelcher for the belt buckle. Instead of using Corvus like we have done before for handwear, I used Dryad Bark to paint his single glove to make it look like a leather pilot's glove, avoiding his fingers, which I then painted with Cadian Fleshtone. His firearm was next, for which I used the slightly darker Abaddon Black. And for some reason, Brad's gun is much more defined than everyone else's, so I used Leadbelcher to paint the ejection port. For his boots, I used Steel Legion Drab to paint the tops and the laces. Then I followed that up with Corvus Black for the rubber parts, such as the soles and the back parts sculpted onto the model. To paint the Stars logos on his sleeves, I used a watered down layer of the Fang to wash over them, leaving the details still raised and showing, which I then painted using Retributor Armour, picking out the on the logo. You may have noticed that Bradley is covering a nasty looking wound on his stomach with his arm, so I used Khorne Red to paint what you can see. For once, it doesn't matter if this step gets a little messy, as he is bleeding out after all. Right then, finally, the bit you've all been waiting for, the bastard freehand camouflage pattern. To start off, I used Zandri Dust just to paint some small wavy patches on his trousers, just picking out some random areas to put them in. Once they were completely dry, I used Mournfang Brown to paint some more small wavy patches, intersecting with the Zandri Dust patches and the green of his trousers. Finally, I used Abaddon Black with a very fine point on my brush to paint some black lines, again intersecting the patches of colour we have already put down and the green of his trousers. Once it all comes together, you can see it creates a wicked looking forest camo pattern. The final stage after that nerve-wracking experience was, of course, the wash stage. I used Seraphim Sepia to wash his jacket, followed up with Reikland Fleshshade for his skin. I used Nuln Oil for the majority of everything else remaining, such as his boots, hair, shirt sleeves, badges, and gun. Finally, I used a very thin wash of Agrax Earthshade, getting most of it off my brush just to wash his trousers, to bring the camo pattern together nicely. And finally, we based our chicken-hearted hero with our standard technique. I'm not even going to say it, you know what it is. After I gave him that heroic blue band around the base, the very last thing I did was add a small amount of blood for the blood god to his stomach wound and arm, and added a few drops of it to the base to imply that he is still bleeding. And there you have it, our cowardly chopper pilot ready to redeem himself and attempt to escape Raccoon City on his own. Wait, are we sure he's still trying to redeem himself and not just out for his own benefit? Another new character for our ever-expanding roster, Brad Vickers has some interesting skills that allow him to move faster than normal at the cost of vital supplies, which could just give us an edge on the tabletop against the ever-expanding horde of undead. He is still very much at the mercy of the hands of the Nemesis, however. I am not going to lie, I was bricking it about painting the camo pattern on his trousers, as I've never painted anything freehand before, but with a little patience, I think it came out better than I could have ever imagined. Brad was actually great fun to paint, and I think he was one of the best looking models I've painted to date so far. Once again, thank you all for watching, I really do appreciate it, and I hope to see you all in the next one. Stay safe, survivors!